Hello, storytellers. Welcome to Bound by Words. My name is Madie. I am a freelance editor and fantasy writer, and today we are talking about something that I think most people have probably experienced if you've been writing for any amount of time, and that is writing through self-doubt. Self-doubt, I think, is just it's almost contagious. It's a little bit of a plague, and I think it has been crawling through our community slowly and surely, back and forth, over and over again for as long as it has existed. There are a lot of different things that can create self-doubt, and today we're going to talk about not necessarily how to get out of it, but how to sort of shift our mindset to make it a little bit less damaging, and also why it is important to push through self-doubt before making any big decisions about your book, your writing, your novel, anything like that. First and foremost, even though we talk about writing, novel writing, storytelling, and all that kind of stuff on this channel, I think this applies pretty heavily to any kind of art, just in general. Naturally, some people are better at different art forms, Some kids can draw a little bit better than others. Some adults can play instruments better than others just naturally without having to foster really that skill or put any effort into learning it. But I think what it is important to note is that in every single instance, somebody who is extremely skilled in a certain form of art or expression or a certain skill, somebody who is an expert there, somebody who has turned it into a business, who has made it profitable, who has just a successful platform where they share it, whether they make money or not, all of those types of people have put some work into developing that skill further. There's not a single person who has a successful skill, who does something at the level of mastery, who hasn't actually put work into learning and developing. Even if somebody naturally writes really well and they're naturally a really good storyteller, there is no way that they have gone through the process of writing a story and doing all of the editing and publishing and selling their book and have it be an outrageously good sale without learning anything new or working on any skill in writing. It's just impossible. So holding yourself to that standard is sort of silly as well. We always talk about how you shouldn't compare your platform to other people's platforms, and you shouldn't compare your book success to other people's book success. One of my favorite quotes is don't compare your first draft to somebody else's final draft. I think that's where a lot of people start to get their self-doubt, is whenever they're looking at either the first draft or the first few drafts of their book, and they're thinking, this isn't quite the quality of this book that I just read that I loved, or this isn't quite the quality of even my critique partner's book. And in every one of these situations, it's important to remember that writing is a skill, just like any other art. It is something that you can learn how to do better. So instead of thinking my writing isn't good enough, or my platform isn't big enough, I highly encourage anybody to tack the word yet onto the end of those negative thoughts that sort of intrude their way into our creative processes. My writing isn't good enough yet, my platform isn't good enough yet, my small platform doesn't compare to this big successful AuthorTubers platform yet, and that gives us, I think, the first step from I have this problem and I'm upset about it, a little bit closer, just that first step closer to I'm going to find a solution to this thing that either bothers me or this thing that has become a problem in my publishing path or my book writing path. Whether you are writing to publish and you want this to be a business and you want it to be marketable and profitable, or you're just writing because it's a hobby, self-doubt will attack you the same way. And I think there are two ways that anybody comes out of self-doubt, just one of two ways. You either come out of it thinking you should throw in the towel and that's just probably it, and that's where you should wrap it up and move on to another hobby. Maybe you go along with it just a little bit longer just to make sure, or you come out of that self-doubt thinking, I need to make a change. So you just ask yourself, if you're feeling those feelings now, ask yourself which one of those people you want to be. Do you want to throw in the towel now and just move on? And if you sincerely want to do that, then there's nothing wrong with that. Or do you want to make a change? And I don't think it's ever smart to make the decision to quit in the middle of an episode of self-doubt, because what happens is things are going to get stressful, you're going to feel burnt out, you're going to make the decision to stop because it is strenuous, because it is giving you negative feelings, and then maybe a few months down the line or a year down the line, whenever you look back at it, you're going to think, what would have happened if I just kept that up? What would have happened if I just kept posting videos? What would have happened if I kept writing that book that I was working on and I just pushed through a little bit longer? So if you need to take a break to reset, definitely take a break, but I would refrain from making any hard decisions about quitting, and definitely never throw away your work, but I would wait to make any hard decisions until you're in a little bit more positive of a mindset. Now, the next thing we're going to be talking about is the tricky part, and that is escaping self-doubt. And the reason this is so tricky is because it's going to look different for everybody. There is no 1, 2, 3-step process of if you do these things, you'll probably start to feel better. You know, there's a lot of videos on like how to get over writer's block, and some of them have really good advice, and I definitely encourage you to do all of your research. If you're feeling doubt or you're having writer's block or imposter syndrome, do all of your research on things that other people have done to get out of that mindset and to get rid of that feeling, because you might see something that is beneficial to you, but there is no set one way to do it, and a lot of people's systems and processes are going to look different. What is important, I think, is that you figure out where the self-doubt is coming from, and, you know, ask yourself a couple questions there, like, is it something that I can remove, or is it something that I just have to have, you know, a better attitude towards? Is it something that I can find a solution for, or is it something that I just shouldn't even be thinking about? And the reason that I include that shouldn't even be thinking about is because I feel like a lot of the imposter syndrome and self-doubt we feel is usually comparing ourselves to somebody else. And I think in a lot of ways that can actually be really encouraging and motivating and beneficial, but it is definitely a fine line where you can get a lot of negative feelings from comparing some of your writing to even just another friend of yours. If you think their writing is better, you know, you might be a little bit discouraged by that, but, you know, maybe that's just not what you should be thinking about when you have those feelings. And you're going to think those things, and then you got to pack them up and put them away, and then start asking yourself why. Why do I feel like their writing is better? Why do I feel like I am an imposter? You know, is it the quality of writing? Is it the speed that you write? Is it the platform that you have? And once you start pinpointing down the why you are having these feelings, and I hope you can pinpoint them down pretty easily and pretty swiftly, then you can sort of start to make a game plan of how do I make things different. If you're like, I feel like an imposter because my platform just doesn't grow as quickly as some of the other people in my life that I really admire, then look at their platforms and see, you know, what are they talking about? What are they writing? What kind of audience do they have? How do they interact with their audience as a writer? You know, look at those kinds of things and see what you can do differently. And one of the hardest things I think when it comes to novel writing and writing in general is that the field is so incredibly competitive, but the hobby is not. So like the field of publishing is so incredibly competitive. You have people just vying for publishers' attention. You have people who have just given up and have done self-publishing. You have people who have self-published from the get-go so they can be entirely in control of their process. And even in the stages of writing and drafting, you have people who are comparing their word count and their speed and how quickly they're able to write drafts and how quickly they're able to edit and things like that. Even if it's friendly competition, it can be extremely stressful for some people, but writing itself should be a leisurely hobby. It's a thing that a lot of people do just for fun, just because they like stories. So it's this weird balance where a lot of people get into it because they want to tell a story or they want to express themselves, and they get sucked up into a whirlwind that is competition, sometimes by accident. And if that's the why behind your feelings of self-doubt, then, you know, find ways to remove yourself from that competition. I had somebody post recently, and I don't remember who it was, but I seen it on Twitter, and I just remember thinking, like, go them, but they posted that they're not going to be sharing their writing with anybody for a while because they really enjoy writing, and they had some bad feedback, and we're going to talk a little bit later in another video about being a good critique partner. I will link it up here if it is posted already, but they had gotten some bad feedback, and it had affected them so negatively that they pinpointed that as the why, and they decided that they were going to remove that in order to continue writing, to continue enjoying it, to continue improving a skill. They were going to remove that cause of negative feeling. And I think everyone should do that, especially if you're in like the pits of self-doubt, because what self-doubt really is and what imposter syndrome is and what all of those worries really are, it's a feeling of self-consciousness. And I think a lot of people are more familiar with the term like self-conscious when we're talking about like our physical appearance or our actions or our attitude, but it is the same when it comes to skill. You have to be comfortable enough with your skill to share it and to be able to grow and to be able to see where your weaknesses are and invest in improving them. And I think coming out of self-doubt the correct way is coming out of it finding a way to address the issue through improvement. So it might not be the most uplifting thing. It might not be fun to look at your work and say, you know what, I really don't feel like my writing is there yet. And the thing that I need to do to make it better is I need to start sharing my work for the first time and really get feedback and find a good critique partner that'll give me good feedback so that I can improve. Maybe it's just sitting with your work yourself, picking up something old and saying, what about this do I not like as a reader? Maybe it's comparing it to a book that's already published and saying, okay, I understand now that my pacing might be a little bit too slow, but just finding one thing that you can do to improve the area of self-doubt in writing is one step closer to not even being in a position where you can feel that. I'm sure that great writers who have written dozens of books might sit down to their next draft and feel that imposter syndrome or feel the weight of like, what do I write next and how do I live up to it? You know, all of us creators, whether you have a small channel or a large channel, if we are present and we're sitting in front of people and we're connecting to this audience and we're sharing our thoughts and stuff, there's a lot of weight of like, when I publish something, the people who are going to see it might have like really high expectations. So, you know, you get all of those negative feelings. But my strongest opinion on this topic is that criticism without like suggestions of improvement, even if it's coming from yourself, self-criticism included, having that criticism without any kind of suggestion of improvement or solution or game plan, it's just complaining. That's all it is. That's the only difference between complaining and criticism is criticism should be given, even to yourself, with an air of how do I do better, how do I improve, and how do I make this whole situation a little bit different for the next time I have this feeling. And that is the only real difference between complaining and criticism, is complaining is just whining about it, it's being sad about it, and criticism is saying that there is an issue that I want to find a solution to, or maybe I've been given a solution, or I can suggest something, I can start to work on it in the interest of improving. So I can't say that if you experience self-doubt and you nail down the why and you get out of it, you're not going to experience it again, but when you do, it's going to be about a different topic. When you do, it's going to be another period of growth. If you're experiencing self-doubt because you don't feel like your stories are exciting enough, that is a good sign to start looking at, you know, correct pacing and adding tension and incorporating subplots. And if you pick just one of those things to improve, then your storytelling techniques are going to get better. And then the next time you have sort of a mellow feeling of, I need to do something different, I need to make my writing better, you know, you'll pinpoint down the why and then you'll find another area of improvement. So take those feelings and don't wallow in them and let them be like the bane of your existence. Don't let them like demolish your will to write. Take those feelings and feel them if you have to. Wallow in them for a day or two and then start to think, what can I do to make it so that I don't have to feel the same kind of self-doubt again? And before you know it, you're going to look back at your old writing from months ago or years ago, and you're going to see this incredible amount of growth that you've had. And then circling back to what we said at the beginning, it'll help you realize that writing is a skill that you can get better at if you feel like you are not there yet. Marketing your book is a skill that you can learn how to be better at if you feel like you're not there yet. So giving up or giving into those feelings of self-doubt and really letting them destroy your work or your publishing path or your excitement about a project is really overall kind of silly. And with that, I hope that you have a more positive rest of your day. I will see you guys next time.